Okay.
Older sister. And then Marcus is her sister.
So as long as they can see me and they can see the whiteboard. Oh, I need my markers. Okay. So last week. Oh, wait a minute. Let me find.
Do I need to add it to the timeline?
Yeah, you can put 476 on the timeline. We did that last week. Okay. I needed to find my notes. So you can give me your retelling of St. Patrick and the brothers. Let me find my glasses, because now I can't see anything without my glasses when I read. And my sons say, you need to get one of the old lady chains.
Oh, so you don't lose them?
Yeah, and I said, no, I'm not. We're not doing an old lady chain.
It doesn't have to be a chain. There's like
But it's just,
straps.
it's an old lady thing. I don't want to be an old lady. But yes, they come they don't have to look goofy like that. Does anyone want to share their story?
Not really, no.
Okay. It's
Also,
fine.
I kind of got mixed up and I didn't mention our stony bridge with boiling water till this.
Oh, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that we did not mention the boiling water and the it's fine.
I didn't know the title. Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. The Stone Brothers. It sounds like a rock group. Like the Rolling Stones, the Stone Brothers. Are you contemplating this? Nobody wants to share this. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to read these, and I'm going to, I was going to say write all over them. That is not what I want to communicate here. I'm going to just make suggestions. I will, if there's a grammar problem. When we start out, I'm going to write more, but we're going to get a code together so that you will know, if you put two sentences together with only a comma, it's called a comma splice. You can't just say, it was a nice hot day, comma, I ate some ice cream. That's illegal. You'll go to jail. I want to save you from that. So I will tell you, and eventually you will know comma splice, or eventually I'm just going to have to circle the comma. You're going to go, oh yeah, did it again. Okay, so, but initially, so do not be alarmed if I come back next week and there's lots of red. I use a red pen, not to be mean, just because you can see it better. And, but I'm not going to give you a grade. But what I'm going to ask you to do when I bring them back next week is I'm going to ask you to correct what you need to correct. So do another one. And so for those of you that handwrite, this is kind of, and I will, if it's so minor that I think you don't need to take the time to write it all out again, I will tell you. But the only way you can remember, oh, she wants me to do it this way, or it's not legal to do it that way, is to do it. And I've done this this is my 8th year of doing this, and you take it home and then not you, but students do it again because they didn't practice it. Do you know what I mean? But you're not going to have to bring that second one back to me, because think about it. You wrote this and then you gave it to me, and then you're not going to get it back for a week. Then you wouldn't be able to give it back to me for a week. It's just too long. Okay, so I will tell your parents all of this too. But I would like us to experiment this year with making the corrections at home. Those of you that type, it's really easy because you can just save it and then you can go. But it's a good reminder for you to go in and make your own corrections. So thank you. I will read these this week and get them back to you.
I'm using a new computer, so I don't know how to save my figures.
Okay, well, ask for help, or, print out. Oh, no, print out an extra copy. Well, you know what? It could double as typing practice if you had to type it all up again.
I'll just Google how to do it.
Okay. We read this week about the Eastern Empire. Go ahead and get your reading questions out that I gave you. And I have a map, which hopefully Andrew, who may be the only one who ever watches this video, will see, but that is okay.
We actually went on vacation with Andrew.
Oh,
So our families are close friends.
so why is he not back?
He
Where
went
did they
to the
go?
beach with his family after.
Oh, you didn't get to go to the beach
We
after?
went to the beach before.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we went
You
to
didn't miss
visit
the
a
beach.
mutual friend that
Okay.
we recently missed
Okay.
the beach.
So this week, and I'm peeking around you, Maria. Yeah, it's kind of far away, but you know what? This is the best I can do. I was going to set it in the middle of the table, but that's just not happening. You know what? Next week, I might try moving the camera. I might have you guys separate and put it right between you. All right, so by the third or fourth week, I'll have it. I'll just boom, 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 and I'll have it all set up. So we talked about what was going on in this eastern part. So if you took a line, so here's Italy, it's the boot. Here's Greece, it's got funny squiggly fingers sticking down. And if you drew a line roughly between them, this is the western part and this is the eastern part, the Eastern Empire. And the map that I gave you last week, you can see the crosshatched part, that's the Eastern Empire. And remember, it didn't fall apart. It stayed going for another 1,000 years. And I actually was smart enough, Addison, I printed out the questions. So I actually have them. Instead of saying, what's the next question? What's the next question? Like I did last year. So my first question I asked you guys is, why is it not, oh, sorry, I need to say one more thing. So go ahead, and Addison, this is different this year. Go ahead, if you just didn't know the answer or you didn't have your book or whatever, just go ahead and jot down the answer or change the answer or add to it, because, and then these go back in your folders. I'm not going to collect them this year because I actually have 22 of you this year.
In this class?
No, I have Wednesday class too, that's really big. And I have 22 of these, and I just can't, and papers too. So, and you guys are old enough, you know, to correct your own things. But, so we're just gonna kinda, are we comfortable with just going around the table and answering? Are you comfortable with starting, Mariana?
Sure.
So why do you think it's not really accurate to say that the Roman Empire fell? I kinda just gave you the answer.
Because
Okay, Jack, can you just lift the tripod up off of Bailey? Okay. For you watching at home, we have a St. Bernard. Oh, yay. Okay, so, yeah, that's good. That's good. We made it. Bailey, sometimes you're just large and, I'm sorry. You, go ahead. Back to what we were asking. Why is it not accurate to say that the Roman Empire fell in 476?
Because in 476, the Western Empire
The
fell,
Western.
but the Eastern Empire was still like thriving
Yeah.
for like another 1,000.
Another 1,000 years. But since we're focusing on the West in this class, I mean, it's convenient to say it fell. But so we're going to talk about this chapter you read. And it's honestly like compressing 1,000 years of history into one class period, which is just not fair. But we don't have time to cover everything. Obviously there were, over 1,000 years, there are a lot of emperors. And we're only talking about one of them, which also doesn't seem very fair. But he's quite notable. Jack, what did you put down, what did you think was Justinian, the Emperor Justinian's most important thing that he did?
Let's see.
It's okay.
I have it written down, I just can't really read this word.
I have this problem sometimes too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Mm. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. The most important work of Justinian was the great codification of law. Law. He put the laws together. So here was the problem with the law. Rome had laws. The Roman Empire had laws. But they had not just one collection. They had laws all over the place. And sometimes they contradicted each other. Like one law says, I'm making this up, you can jaywalk, and another one says you can't. And so some people are jaywalking and some people aren't, and some people are getting arrested and some people aren't. Jaywalking was not an issue, but an example of what happens when we don't know what the laws are, right? So Justinian put the best minds he could find on collecting all the legal documents from all over the empire and sorting through them and writing up a law code, which sounds to me not the most exciting thing to do with your life, but some people love that sort of thing. And it was really important for people to know what was expected of them, and for things to run smoothly. And that law code that he put together actually was the basis for all the legal codes throughout the Middle Ages. Like up until fairly recently, I mean past the Middle Ages, 1700s, 1800s, the law code of Justinian was the baseline for all legal codes. So they might have spent their lives doing something marginally not very exciting, but it did the world a great good as they had this all collected. Addison, the next thing I asked you about Justinian, what was the name of the magnificent Byzantine church built by Justinian?
Sancta Sophia.
Sancta Sophia, sometimes it's called the Hagia Sophia. Hagios in Greek means holy, and sanctus in Latin means holy. So it's Sancta Sophia, Hagia Sophia. The Church of Wisdom, Holy Wisdom. And there's a picture in your book, but it's not very good. Isn't there a picture? Yeah, this Sancta Sophia. Okay, do all of your books have pictures? Are they like mine? Because there's other editions that
I don't know.
you don't know, because poor Natalie can't. Apparently, there's been a run on the Book of the Middle Ages, and everybody wants one, and she can't get one.
There are 2 different titles by the same person, but in different covers. So
Well, but is one cover like hers?
I've
Oh.
seen like 4 different
Oh, okay.
things.
As long as it's Dorothy Mills, The Book of the Middle Ages. But I told your mom, she left me a message. I was gone all weekend to the wedding.
Oh,
Yeah, it was good. It was stressful. I'm really tired, but
yeah. Oh, your daughter's wedding?
yeah, my daughter got married on Saturday.
Oh, nice.
But I told just to order from Memoria Press, and I think from here on out, for you in the future, I'm just going to tell everybody, just go to Memoria Press and order. They have them. This is the Memoria Press edition. They always have them. They use them at their school in Louisville, and you can always get them from them, and then they'll all match. And it might be a few dollars more than hunting it down on Amazon or somewhere, but it's worth it to get it. But what I was going to say is this is not a very good picture of this wonderful cathedral that he built. And so look it up online. I have a book with beautiful pictures, but I had so much stuff to cart with me that I just didn't bring the book. But this is a good time to stop and talk about 2 things. First of all, I used the word Byzantine in that question, and I didn't explain it. What is Byzantine? What does that word mean? You were just going to forgive me for putting a word in your question. You were just going to forgive me, which is very nice of you. So, Constantinople, right here. And this is a good time to talk about where Constantinople is. Constantinople is at an excellent place because around the Black Sea, they grow a lot of wheat. It's a real heavy food growing region. And it gets shipped out and it goes right past Constantinople. So it's a place where, you can collect tolls. I'm sorry, Mariana, I'm standing in front and you can't see. You can collect tolls through ships coming back and forth. During the height of the Roman Empire, they imported a lot of their food from Egypt and the Black Sea region. So it's got this wonderful place. So it's got shipping, it's got land, it's got a wonderful harbor. And it was actually originally a Greek colony. So we talked about this last year. The Greeks, at one point in their history, sent out and planted a lot of colonies, some in southern Italy, and one of them was right up here. And its name was Byzantium. The name of that town was Byzantium. And it was a town, going on. You know what, Natalie, would you just go push the door closed because they've got the AC on. Thank you. When Constantine decided to make a new capital for himself, he chose Byzantium. Yeah, you know what, that's good enough. You have to really, it's a weightlifting, it's a strength training workout sometimes to close the door. I think it swells in the humidity. We have doors like that at home. When Constantine decided to plant his new city there, of course, he named it after himself because he can. Oh, You shake your head. But if you had a chance to make a new city, Natalopolis. Natalieville. I don't know. Yeah. So he called it after himself Constantinople. Polis means city, so it's Constantine's city. And it was known for 1,000 years that way. It is still there, but it is not called Constantinople anymore. Do you know what it is called now? Do you know the song? Are you thinking of this? Istanbul, okay. Istanbul was Constantinople. No, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Yeah, I won't play the song. Yeah, okay. So now you know. When the Turks, it's nobody's business but the Turks, when the Turks took over in 1453, they renamed the city Istanbul. And today it is part of the country of Turkey, and it is Istanbul. So weirdly, and maybe because it sounds better, they don't call it the Constantinopolitan Empire. They call it the Byzantine, because Constantinopolitan is just too long and too hard to say. I don't know. So yeah, so we refer to this era, that 1,000 years when it kept going on, as the Byzantine Empire, because it used to be called Byzantium. It's not I didn't. When my kids were little and we were doing spelling, they would argue with me, well, it shouldn't be spelled like that. It's like, it's not my fault. I didn't make up the spelling, so I didn't make up this rule. So that's what I meant by Byzantine Empire. The second thing I wanted to mention is the Byzantine world, that empire that went on for another 1,000 years, developed its own style of art. Let me stop and tell you the story of East versus West. When the Roman Empire was in charge of everything, travel was really easy. You know, the Romans made great roads, and they traveled all over. But as things started falling apart, and all those crazy tribes came in, like on the map I gave you last week, and everything was falling apart, and it became more dangerous to travel and more difficult. This dividing line started to make a difference. These people were speaking Latin as their first language, their primary. But all this time, people on this side had continued speaking Greek. They would learn Latin. So it's kind of like on this side, I get taught Latin, but if I get a good education, I also learn Greek. And on this side, I grow up speaking Greek, and if I go into public service or I get a good education, I also learn Latin. Does that make sense? But as things started crumbling and disintegrating, we have these people over here, they're not traveling back and forth very much anymore, and their primary language is Greek. These people's primary language is Latin. And you know what happens when people speak different languages, right? Like Tower of Babel. You can't communicate ideas and thoughts anymore. So they started very quickly kind of going their separate ways. I'm not saying people didn't travel back and forth and send letters and things, but they developed their own ideas and art and architecture on separate paths. Does that make sense? And so Byzantine art is very distinctive. This is a much later picture that I brought. You can obviously tell what this is. It is Mary and Jesus. And this is an example of, this is a good example of Byzantine. Here, you know what, we're going to take this over here. I don't know if Andrew can see. Hello, Andrew. What do you notice? What strikes you? What sticks out when you look at this picture? Just any
Such a tiny head.
Okay, yes, he does have a tiny head. Do you know, Jesus sort of looks like you know how babies have enormous heads? I mean, they just do. Let's just face it. It's part of the cuteness, I think, is that their head size is disproportionate to their body size, and as you grow, it sort of gets normal. He has the proportion of more of a grown-up. He doesn't look like a toddler. What else? Well, but yeah, so it is. I mean, because this is just very odd style. But what else do you notice about it?
Her head's really
Okay, well, no, do more than weird. More than weird. What, in what way? It's very round.
They have sun crowns again.
They do have the crowns. Hers is a little hard to see. So let me ask you this.
Oh, they're in a like Colosseum.
Okay, so they're in this weird thing. It's called Madonna and Child on a curved throne. A Madonna is Mary, my lady, means my lady, and and if you want to look this up, Andrew, or the random people that watch my videos, apparently that I don't know, it's 13th century, but the artist is unknown, but it's in the National Gallery of Art in Washington D.C. So curved throne, but Addison said very well, it looks like the Colosseum. Here's what I like to fantasize about this picture. I don't know if this was intended, but it's like Christianity has conquered Rome. It's like the evils of the Colosseum and everything, but who is Lord of all that? Jesus is Lord of all that.
Who painted that?
We don't know.
Is it a painting or is it?
It is a painting. It says it is tempera on a wooden panel, tempera paint. Let me ask you this to guide you. Do these look like real people? Or is it a realistic
In a very
painting?
unsettling way, yes.
Okay. I mean, they do have eyes and nose. Like, they don't look like aliens,
Well,
but they don't look like, think of Rembrandt. Think of a Renaissance painter, all right, where it's almost like a photograph. I know you've seen paintings that look almost like really, really very real. Would you mistake this for a photograph? I don't think I would either.
Well, I didn't see for a photograph of a painting.
Okay, it is a photograph of a painting. This is true. So what about the style makes them not look quite...
Seems golden.
Okay, the colors are not real. What colors do you see? What colors stand out?
Red.
Okay.
Gold.
Red, blue, gold. Tell me about red. What do you think red makes you think of?
Martyrdom.
Martyrdom, exactly, red. So in paintings all through the Middle Ages, if someone's dressed in red, Jesus is going to die, and a sword will pierce her heart as well. It says in the Gospels. She's going to have to watch the death of her son. Blue, we're going to call it bluish purple, because for the ancients, blue and purple were sort of, they are royalty, exactly, royal purple. So he's a king.
Is that the intent of it?
Yes, I believe it is the intent of this. And
orange. He's wearing orange.
and he is wearing orange, which I have nothing to say about. But there's just a little spot of orange. But we have a lot of red, some bluish purple. What's the other color that just really grabs you? It's gold. Riches. The wise men brought gold to him. He is the king of everything. He owns everything.
The angel's wings are orange.
The angel's wings are orange. You know, here's another thing too. This, as Mariana said, this is a picture of a painting. Do you know what I mean? A photograph, a reproduction, which means the colors might not be completely accurate. Okay, this angel is holding the world. They both seem to be holding, well, I don't know if that's the world or not. It's got a cross on it and a scepter, like a king's scepter. Your eyes are better than mine. What do you think? It kind of looks like the world, and then it kind of looks like it's got a
looks
cross
like,
on it.
With like coronations and stuff, when they hold that stick and like
Yeah.
the little, I don't know what to call it,
Like
the
a
ball. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Exactly like that.
Because he's the king. This is the king. So this is an example of Byzantine. Look at I hate to say this, but look at Mary's nose. Okay, it's just everything's very angular, sharp. You know what I mean? Like sharp lines. It's not. Well, I guess that's not true, because look at the folds of the robe. You can see. So that's not. Those aren't sharp lines.
The
I-
feet are sharp.
The feet are sharp, and this is kind of interesting. it's not, we're used to paintings using the rules of perspective. But do you notice how we're looking straight at her, but we're looking down on the stool that her feet are on? Do you see what I mean? Like if we were looking straight on, we ought to be looking at the front edge, but we ought not to be able to see the top of the stool. Does that make sense? Because of the rules of perspective. And they're not using the rules of perspective. They're not interested in it. It's not that they're stupid or bad artists. They just weren't interested in it.
You can also see the inside of the chair. It's like
Yes. Yeah, you can, yes. Where you wouldn't be able to see normally. So we,
that.
yes. So this is an example of Byzantine. We're going to look at some other Byzantine art in a minute. So if you want to, maybe you guys can look up Madonna and Child on a Curved Throne, 13th century, and you can tell me all about what the angels are holding. I have a book at home that probably tells me, but okay, so that, and actually that takes us to my next question, and Natalie doesn't have a book, so it's not really very fair to ask her the question. That would be really mean. So we're going to go back around to Mariana and ask you, what great controversy broke out in the Eastern Church in the 8th century?
I think it was kind of like between the Eastern Church and the West.
That did start happening, but there was something that was happening just in the East. There was a big argument.
They want to get rid of holy images.
They wanted to get rid of the icons. It was called the iconoclast controversy. Let me talk about that, but let me talk about what Mariana said first. She was talking about the split between the church. You guys probably know that there is the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Okay, and there are also Protestant denominations, but for purposes, but those are much newer. Those are only a few hundred years old, but we're going back. So once upon a time, of course, they were all joined and connected. But remember I talked about the Latin and the Greek and things developing? They also developed theologically slightly differently. And so another important thing was, yeah.
Was there like anything with the Southern Baptist Convention where it's like keeps every church in check and stuff? Or like
There was.
it
It was called ecumenical councils. So bishops came from all over the empire and they would meet. The first one was the Council of Nicaea. We talked about that last year. But yes, so every once in a while when there was a controversy, when there was a problem, they would call a council. Sometimes there would just be local councils. And the bishops say, because there was one in North Africa, and they had a council just for the bishops of North Africa because they were dealing with something. But when there was something really huge, they would call all the bishops that could come. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a council where every single bishop in the entire world came, you know. But as many as could come would come. And they would gather in one place, and they would hash it out, and they would decide what is church doctrine? What is our policy on this? And so, but there were 5 bishops that were really kind of more important than the rest. One was the Bishop of Rome, and we call him the Pope. One was the Bishop of Constantinople, one in Antioch, one in Jerusalem, and one in Alexandria. There were 5 of them, the 5 big patriarchates. They call them patriarchs, fathers. And you notice something. There's 1 on this side and 4 on this side. So on this side, it came to be taught that the Pope, there was one leader of the church. In this side, they always had a community of bishops. It just kind of grew up that way because they had 4 of them. And they don't, like the Bishop of Antioch doesn't, well, I'm one of the important 5 too. And so it developed differently. So over time, it didn't happen overnight. But like Mariana was saying, over time, the 2 sides spread apart until in the year 1053, 1054, they finally split. They weren't in communion with each other anymore. And they aren't anymore. We need to knit this back. There should only be one church. We're all Christians, right? And Jesus said they will know we are Christians by our love. And he prayed that we would be one as he and the Father are one, and we're not. So we may represent lots of different Christian traditions in this room, but if we all believe that Jesus is God and he died for us, we should be one church. We should be able to work it out, but we haven't. And it's a sad story. So that is something that developed. And we're going to touch on it again later. I think even in your chapter here, they talked about the final split between the East and the West. So the East has churches like the Russian Orthodox and the Greek Orthodox and the Serbian Orthodox, but they're all one, just like Roman Catholics are one church. All the Orthodox branches are one Orthodox church. And so they're developed, so this was in the East. In the East, they also developed, in the West, they used more statuary. Like they adorned their churches with statues and things. But in the East, they used pictures, but they weren't just any pictures. They had to be made by special people called iconographers. Icon doesn't just mean picture. It's like in the Bible, when it says we are made in the image of God, we are the icon of God. God is in us. When I look at one of you, you are made in the image of God. I see God's creation. You are an icon of God. And they use these in their worship. And a emperor came to the throne and he's like, that's wrong, we're going to get rid of them. We're going to smash them. And they went on smash indeed.
Are there like stained glass windows?
No, not really. The Eastern churches, they didn't do that. And actually they weren't in the West at this point. They weren't building the cathedrals yet. But they went through and they literally took hammers to them and they smashed them all. We have very few ancient icons left because they destroyed them.
Like statues or pictures?
They're pictures. So I brought some icons. These are my icons. So so icons are made not, okay, remember our Byzantine, Our Lady on the curved throne? They're not made to be a photograph. They're made to tell a story. All right, so they have images, they tell a story. I'll pass this around. So this is the icon, and they always look very similar. There's rules for the icons. This is an icon of the Nativity. Okay, so you always see this. Interestingly, something that, they started, like it was a big announcement, discovery. Oh, we think the stable was really a cave. They used, well, we know that now. That they used caves for stabling their animals. It was probably a cave that Jesus was born in. It probably wasn't a state like a barn. In the East, they always represented it as a cave from the very beginning. So we have this cave, and we have a manger, but look what the manger looks like.
Is that a water? A trough?
Well, a manger is a food trough. So they laid Jesus in a food trough because they hadn't anywhere else. But usually the food trough where they were wooden and they had little legs and they put the hay in it. But Addison said it. What does it look like? It looks like a coffin because he was born to die. His death was there in his birth. It's connected. There's no taking them apart, right?
So
Christmas and Easter, they're the flip sides of the same coin. That's the other side.
we had devotional this morning with my dad, and we were like, it was about like Jesus' birth sort of, and my dad was like, wait, so Jesus was in a belly for 9 months, and he couldn't talk for like 15, 18 months.
Yes, he grew up which is something that, okay, I'm digressing. This is all important, and I better see what time, we're fine. It took hundreds of years for the church to really work through. What does that mean that Jesus is God and Jesus is a man? Like, was he just a God in a man body? Did he really have a man soul? Did he really not know things? And they worked through what are the implications of that for Jesus and for us? That he can't save us if he's not man, and he can't save us if he's not God.
He has two natures, the nature of the God and the nature of
in one person. So we always see the angels and telling the shepherds, and then we always see this is very interesting. Joseph off to the side, and the man, like an angel in disguise, explaining to Joseph why these things are happening. Because Joseph, was at first, he was a little, I don't know about this, until the angel spoke to him, right? It said in the Bible that he was going to divorce her quietly.
Isn't that Mary?
What?
I thought they weren't married yet.
They
But
weren't,
were in,
but
like,
you know what? In those times, engagement was binding. It was almost as binding as the marriage. So it says that's the terminology. He put it in mind. Sometimes it says put her aside, but some translations say divorce her quietly. You couldn't just say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't want to marry you now, after there's a betrothal. It was a binding thing. So anyway, so obviously it's showing a bunch of things happening at the same time. I have a couple of others. So this is St. Nicholas. This is actually the St. Nicholas that Santa Claus, St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas was a guy who lived in the, I got my numbers right. I want to say in the 500s or 600s. And the great story, the famous story about St. Nicholas is that there were these girls, and they belonged to a really poor family. And they were going to have to prostitute themselves to feed their family. There was no other way. And Nicholas was the bishop of Myra. It's up here. And he gathered money, and at night he threw bags of money through their window. So this is why St. Nicholas brings us gifts. So many Catholic families celebrate the feast of St. Nicholas, have gifts on St. Nicholas's feast day, which is earlier in December rather than Christmas. And so he's got this weird something happening to his head. And it's because, and in the Protestant tradition, you don't do things like this, so you're gonna go like that. It's weird. But that his relics, that they open them up, like his bones, and there was myrrh. There was sweet smelling. It was like a perfume coming from them. So it's the myrrh. I know it seems very weird. So that is so St. Nicholas always looks roughly like that. He always has the kind of receding hairline, which unfortunately, apparently poor St. Nicholas was losing his hair at an early age.
Savior. He was like writing.
It's in Greek, it says it's St. Nicholas.
Okay.
And my last one is St. Catherine of Alexandria. And so she, I gotta put my glasses on. She's always pictured with a wheel, and that is because she was a martyr, early martyr in Alexandria in Egypt. Well, she has hair tied up. She has a crown, and she was threatened with torture, and she on a wheel. Like, I don't know, like they stretch you out on a wheel, and I know she was tortured. I don't think they actually did it. You know about this, don't you? Probably. But they stretch you out. It was a torture machine. Okay, so she always has her wheel. She always has Mount Sinai, the burning bush. That's why the mountain's on fire. Okay, this is the burning bush because they transferred her remains to the top of Mount Sinai, and there's a monastery at the base of Mount Sinai, St. Catherine's Monastery. Anyway, so my point in showing you this is there's code, like there's icon code, and you learn to read them, and I'm not good at it. Like, I don't know everything, but you see things, it's like, oh, this is for this, this is for this, this is for Mount Sinai, and it's got a code. This one looks a little more realistic, I feel like, and the St. Nicholas is a little more. So the churches, Orthodox churches are decorated with these. They have a big screen at the front with the icons on it. And it's just, it says in Hebrews that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And so when you walk in an Orthodox church, it's like being surrounded by the great cloud of witnesses. Like, these are the people who went before us. These are the great saints. And you know what? They're not dead. Their bodies are dead. But Jesus said, God is the God of the living, not of the dead. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they're alive. Their bodies, they're just not currently inhabiting their bodies. ditto all these people. And all the loved ones that you know, that went to be with the Lord, they're alive. More alive maybe than we are, you know? But there was a big controversy about whether this was okay. Obviously, maybe you guys know this, probably you do. The Jews, it was forbidden in the Old Testament to have any images, right? And the Muslims, who we're going to talk about next week, they also forbid any images. And there were a lot of Jews and Muslims in the East at this point. And they started asking questions, and the leaders of the government, the emperor, thought that it might bring in Jews and Muslims better if they abolished these. And also they just thought it was wrong. So there was a big controversy. They called the church council, and the Pope chimed in too on this, and they ruled in favor of the icons, and the Eastern Church still has icons. But it was knockdown, drag out fight. I mean, when I say great controversy? No.
Right?
Riots. Yes. We were going to say something else.
So they worship them? How does that?
So this is very hard too. So I grew up Protestant, but I'm not Protestant anymore, and so I know both sides. Like, I know what it sounds like, and then I know what the explanation is. And I feel like that makes it really easy for me to deal with students from all backgrounds, because I was baptized in a Southern Baptist church. That was when I was 6 years old, 7. So there's levels. So I don't like to say worship. We say venerate, right? You venerate. So we say someone is venerable. Have you ever heard this word, venerable? Okay. It means worthy of respect. Worthy of respect. And so there's a famous author. I brought the book last week that I read about Pope Gregory and the Angles, and he's called the Venerable Bede. He's worthy of respect. His nickname, the Venerable Bede. So we say they venerate the icons. So here's a good example. What if you had a picture of a loved one in your family, a photograph, a grandma that's gone, or you lost a brother or a sister or something, and you had a photo, and you just got into the habit of acknowledging the photo. Like every morning, it's like, there's my grandma. I miss you, Grandma. And I wouldn't even think it was super weird. I've seen movies all the time. People just love you, Grandma. Love you. All right, people do that, or kiss the photo on the bedside. Oh, my husband or my wife is far away. I kiss the picture and put them up my bedside. They're venerating it. Those people are our family, and so they venerate. So when you go into an Orthodox church, you kiss the icon.
Everyone?
Yeah.
Are they clean?
Doesn't, you know what? Not worried. You know what? People don't have to. Like, it's up to you. But there's just a little, yeah.
Has anyone seen that movie? That's what I think of when he's in pieces.
Jack Black just... Sometimes I like him, and then sometimes I'm like, no, I just can't do Jack Black movies.
Great movie.
She does say worship, but it's not. So Roman Catholic and Orthodox, when Protestants say you're worshiping that, I'm like, yeah, no, not worshiping. You worship God. We are venerating it. We are showing respect. So Jack, is it Good Friday service where you kiss the cross, or is it the Holy Thursday? For Easter.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The veneration of the cross. And you go up and you kiss. And so when I first did that, as a former Protestant, I'm like, this is weird. And then I thought, this makes me happy because I love that cross. Jesus did suffer terrible things for me on that cross. And it makes me happy to say, I love you, Jesus. You know what I mean? But I'm not saying it's just different traditions. But in the Protestant, and this is hard, when you don't come up from a Protestant tradition, it's like, why do you have a problem with that? And the other side is, why would you do that? And it's hard to connect. But it's more, if you think of it like the photos of your grandma, or these people are our fathers and mothers in the faith, you know, and so, like, love your example. You're alive right now. You are part of the great cloud of witnesses. So I will not go on and on about that, but
was it just like they would come into the church and then they would like kiss the statue or something?
except it was always just a picture.
Oh.
So not Roman Catholic. You know, it's harder to get cozy with a statue. Do you know what? And usually they're up on they're not accessible. You know, but you might just, you know, cross yourself. You might just acknowledge. Thank you, Mary, for saying yes to the angel Gabriel. Yes, let it be to me according to your word. I will do this, and it's going to make people think I'm an adulteress, and it's going to get me in big trouble, and they could stone me for it. Because adultery was a stoning offense if Joseph had pressed charges. This was a big deal. So she said, yes, I'll do it. I don't know what the heck you're talking about, but yes, I will do it. And so to acknowledge that. Okay, well, this is not a theology class, obviously, but so that was the big controversy. I want to talk about another, because, okay, I was going to say I think this is funny, but it's not funny at all. I really shouldn't find it funny. Earlier on, back to Justinian. Justinian lived several hundred years before the icon controversy. There was another riot, because you said riot, and it made me think. Okay, so in Constantinople, there were several public buildings. They talked about them, and one was called the Hippodrome. Hippodrome is a funny sounding word. I think it sounds funny. Hippos means horse in Greek, and dromos is part of the verb that means run, so it's where the horses run, right? So it's the chariot race place. It's like the race car stadium, okay? And it started out, they had 4 teams, but it got to the point where it was the blues and the greens. Okay, do you remember she mentioned the blues and the green teams?
That was like the political party.
Yeah, so here it's like if you were Cubs fans and Cardinals fans, but it was tied to your politics, and it was, and when you saw people, like you're a Cardinals fan and you see a Cubs hat, you just kind of have a meltdown and you just go smack them, you know? You've got ugly. So people would go to the chariot races, and it was just like as excited as people get at football games today. It was 10 times more. It was just crazy. So the footage when you see people have riots at soccer games and stuff, and the opposing teams have brawls. Okay, this was happening regularly at the Hippodrome. But it just so happened that Justinian was partial to one side. I don't remember whether it was the blues or greens. Doesn't matter. But so this was a problem. And basically, an enormous riot erupted in Constantinople. It started with the chariot races, and one side was basically going to take over the government. The side that was not Justinian's favorite team. So what I mean by blues and greens, you know, they would wear that color, the chariot racers, right? So it wasn't like you were probably a fan of a particular charioteer, but mostly you were a fan of the team. So like football team, you know, I support that team, and you might have a favorite player, but, and Justinian and his wife Theodora were in danger. They were locked in, and Justinian was freaked out. They were trying to get a boat so they could sneak out and sail away. They were going to abandon the empire because of the sports riot.
Why did they stop chariot races?
I don't know. Well, that probably would have made him riot too, because they loved him so much. So, but I got to read this because I love Theodora's little speech. It has been said, she declared, that the voice of a woman should not be heard among the councils of men, but those whose interests are concerned have a right to speak. Death is inevitable and will come to us all, but no one is compelled to submit to the shame of surviving dignity and honor, of leaving empire for exile. If you wish to lengthen your life, O Emperor, flight is easy. You have ships and there's the sea. But think well whether after you have escaped safely into exile, you will not wish every day that you were dead. Do you really want to go from being emperor to being some poor guy living in a hovel on the run? I don't think so. If my memory serves, it was kind of ugly. He got his general in charge, and the people had flocked back to the Hippodrome because they had grabbed a relative of Justinian. They were going to make him emperor, and they stationed guards all around, and they killed them all. I'm sorry, like 20,000 people. It was a big.
Justinian and Theodora.
Yeah, his generals. But I mean, it was
Wait,
okay.
Killed the rioting people? Or
Yes.
The rioting people
No,
killed
no. The
generals?
generals, Justinian's stationed generals. He put his general in charge, and they all went back there to crown this new emperor, and the soldiers, Justinian soldiers under his general, closed down around at each gate, and locked them in, and went in and just. But they probably would have killed Justinian and his wife. I mean, it was a full-scale traitor riot. I'm not saying, yay, rah, let's go kill 20,000 people. I'm just trying to put it in perspective. It wasn't, there was tremendous danger. It wasn't just, oh, I feel like locking people in the Hippodrome and killing them all. It wasn't like that.
Oh, was it a Hippodrome?
Yes. I noticed something else that I forgot to mention. Another fun story about Justinian. Do you remember what he got from China? You don't
Oh.
because you didn't have a book. So
Was it
Baby.
the silk stuff?
silk. They used to get silk imported from China, but they didn't know where it came from. They didn't know about silkworms. They didn't have them where they lived. They were native to China. And so they would import silk. They would import the raw material. But Justinian sent some ambassadors to China, and they got some silkworms, and they hid them because it was a state secret in China. You couldn't take silkworms out of China. They had a monopoly on the silk industry. And so they smuggled them out, and Constantinople got its very own silk industry.
How many did they smuggle?
I don't know, but maybe they multiply fast. This is a good question.
Did they survive? Like, what do they eat?
I don't know. Maybe they filled their pockets with leaves. Stuck worms. These are all really good questions. This can be your weekly. You can do research on the angels by the curved throne, and you can find out what silkworms eat and how many of them you need to start a silkworm industry. I'm sure it didn't happen overnight, but they knew the secret now. Oh, it's those bugs. They make the silk. Awesome.
Do we know China's reaction when they found out?
We do not. I'm guessing they weren't happy.
Yeah.
Shoot, we sell a lot of that stuff.
But there wasn't any
I
like
expect
war or
people to
anything.
still buy it in China.
Our final, I think, Jack, I think it's your turn. Do you like answering, or do you want to pass, or do you?
I'll answer, yeah.
Okay. The last one was, how did the existence of the Eastern Empire benefit the West? What good
Yeah,
was
the,
it?
Eastern Empire protected it from Muslim attacks.
Yes. So you got these guys. Is it the fly? I
Yes.
know. It's one, those flies that just want to land on you. They won't go away. They just love you. They don't love your neighbor. They just love you. And I'm sorry Bailey is snoring over there, but it's okay. These guys had fallen apart, like the map that I keep pointing to in Natalie's. All these tribes had come in, and it took several hundred years to get themselves on their feet, put back together. And right about the time, which we're going to talk about in a few weeks, right about the time they did get themselves put together, the crazy people in Scandinavia that we call Vikings started sailing around and burning everything. Like, what? We just got everything put back together, and now you're destroying things. So, meanwhile, in the East, the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Empire, has a lot of pressure from people coming up from up here, some of them the same tribes, but Muslim groups. Next week, you're going to read about Islam. And it's not politically correct to say, but I don't care. It's historical. It was a religion of conquest. Muslims set out to conquer the world. That's what they did. Yes, and I'm sorry that people don't like to hear that now. Like, oh, Muslims are peaceful. I know a Muslim man, and I don't know that he would swat that fly that you are, currently dealing with. He's really super nice. He's not much of a practicing Muslim. He just happens, he's from Lebanon. And I'm not saying every single Muslim person is a bloodthirsty, I'm not. But the religion Islam is about conquering. Their holy book, the Quran, is about conquering. They have a right to conquer. And so the Taliban and the groups like that, they're living out a more authentic, Islam than people who are peaceful. I'm sorry, and it's just a historical fact, and I can't. It's the way it is. What were you going to say, Addison?
So, we had a lot of experience with this, and we just heard a lot of stories, because we knew someone that's Muslim, and we know someone that's Muslim, and, she grew up in Tanzania, and so,
Thank you so much.
they would get, when in school, they would, if they got, an A in class, they would get punished because they were cheating. If they got an F in class, they would get punished because they were failing. And then if they, all got A's, they would all get punished because they were working together or something. So basically for any grade they got punished.
Messed up
Yeah.
Muslim families can be very strict, and in countries that are fully Muslim, women's existence is not particularly good. But we'll talk about that next week. But back to the question that Jack just answered for us. The Eastern Empire was a buffer. I'm just going to try to ignore it. From all of these groups of people coming that direction, and they were a buffer, a gate to keep them. I know. We're just distracted by a fly currently, Andrew, and whoever random else is watching this. So for next week, I have reading questions. I will email yours, Andrew. Chapter 4, we're reading chapter 4, and we also have a new story that we're going to outline. So before I hand this out, I want to talk about the Arabian Nights too. Actually, let's talk about it now. What do you think?
I'm just going to be honest right now, a lot of the stories probably are running together in my head because I got home on Sunday and I did it all yesterday.
Oh, well, yes. Well, you know what? All the stories will run together because they go, do you notice how a guy in a story starts telling another story and then they go back to the original story? And you're like, what?
Yeah, there's 4 stories in one.
Yeah, I know in one, it was and there were 5 people who had to tell their story, and in some of those stories, there was someone else
telling a story.
And then it's wait, where did this
I
story
know.
start?
I know.
Yeah.
It's so, I think it's so fun. I love books like that.
I can't.
But sometimes I do. So I read this, everything we're reading the first semester, I read over the summer. So that, because I have all the high school stuff to read, I don't have time to read everything along, every week. And so I reread, because I've read it numerous times, but I just reread. And then yesterday I skimmed back through just to remind myself. And even then I was like, okay, it's that story, it's that story, it's that story. And I thought, wait a minute, where's this part? And the guy, especially the one where he let the genie out of the bottle and the genie was going to kill him because he decided
because in my book it was weird because it was the same title, same author, different chapter titles
Yes.
and different chapter numbers.
Yes.
So the first one it was because he accidentally killed the genie's son by throwing a stone.
Yes. I know. Apparently the son was
He
really
was
small.
eating dates and he threw the seed of the date and it killed the son.
Yes.
I
And
think
all
he
I can
was
think of
picking-
is
What
is
is
like,
he like?
I think it said he was
Chucking
picking
it
up
full
stones, I think.
Well, no, he said the date.
Oh,
Yeah.
it did?
A
I
date
like
stone.
reread
A
the
date
stones.
stone means the pit
Okay.
in the middle of the
How
date.
big?
Yeah, so like his son must be this big, and maybe it fell on him.
It said like it hit him in the eye.
Like it would
But
have
I
been
don't
like
know that-
perfect.
I
know
don't
that
know.
feeling.
Yeah,
You know
just
what?
like-
Here's something you learn really fast with these stories. Just don't ask too many questions. My personal favorite. Oh, I guess I was talking about the one that's in Stories Inside, the one where the fisherman lets the genie out of the bottle, and the genie says, "Oh, after 100 years, I said I'm going to kill whoever because I'm just so angry." He's like, "Well, that's not fair." And he tried to coax him back in the bottle, but he kept saying, "Oh, don't treat me like so and so treated so and so." And then we get off on that story where he cut the guy's head off, and it fell into a basin, and it What? But okay, so I had never read this. I had a copy of it. I grew up, we had a multi-volume set of books, and one of them was the Arabian Nights. And for whatever reason, even though I read a lot when I was growing up, I didn't ever read that one. And so when my kids were young, that was one of our family read. We're going to read the Arabian Nights. So I grabbed the one that I had. And I got to the story about the different colored fish. And so this is where I completely broke down, because I'm reading this aloud for the first time. And so every once in a while I would read books and I'd go, "What the heck is this?" I look at my kids like, "What?" So that if you are fish, are you doing your duty?
Yeah.
If you reckon, we reckon. If we something, and if
Pay
you,
rent.
it's we pay ours, and we are content, or something like
Yeah.
that. And then she spills the skillet
Yeah, it was-
and walks out of the room. What? And I looked at my kids. What just happened? You don't understand anything I just read. They're very odd, but
Maybe it happened like in translation, like words were mixed around.
possibly that is a good point.
Because when
But
I looked the book up, it said translated. Like
yes,
Hebrew language.
no, these are all
Yeah.
Persian stories, but the whole thing can't be a mistaken translation. Do you know what I mean? The reckoning and the women, the calendars, who are holy men. They're like Muslim monks, basically friars, and the women that bring the dogs out and whip them, like we must do our duty, and then the guy that, with the place where all the guys had lost their right eye, and he goes to the palace and like, dude, you just hung out with the guys who all lost their right eye. Don't open the golden door. Don't do it. But you know, in these stories, they always do it, right? Don't they always do it? It's sort of like modern scary movies, and you know that you
Don't
probably
go through
don't
the
go
door.
in that
This
house.
is the dumbest thing you can
You are going to be sorry. You know, they never listen. You tell them, and they
It's
don't
like-
listen.
Why do people have logic? Or common sense?
But it would be a boring story. Remember last week we talked about the fact that if there's no conflict or danger of any sort, it makes a boring story.
Logic and common sense.
Well, it could be like
Missing.
one person was gonna do this, and you know they shouldn't, and they decide, I guess I won't do it, and then this other person comes up behind and says, I'm gonna do it, and goes and does it.
It's like common sense and it's so common.
While we're talking about it, so for next week, we're going to read another quarter of the Arabian Nights book. In my copy, so if it looks like mine, it's pages 110 through 179. And Natalie, we start at Sinbad.
Mine is different.
Are you familiar with the Voyages of Sinbad? Oh, you're so fun. So fun. You're going to love it. He's another one of these stupid people who keeps having problems every time he goes sailing, and he comes home, he's home like a month, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go sailing again. When I was growing up in the 1970s, there was a movie made of the 7 Voyages of Sinbad. This was a memory, it was one of the early movies I went to movie theater to see, Voyages of Sinbad. All the way through, okay, so including the barber's 6th brother. I know. You know, you're not going to hear about all the barber's brothers.
Yeah, so my pages are different too.
Okay, that's fine. So I will tell you the names of the stories. And
Like a blue cover with red on the side. Mine is
My cover is bad.
But is it,
Like my
Mine
mom.
has like pictures in it, and they're terrifying.
so Natalie, so it's the same, it's different chapter titles, but
But
is it the
they're
same
same.
order? It's the
I
same,
looked up the book online and
Uh-huh.
I found all the chapters,
Yes.
and it was like the same titles but different. Like
Okay.
in that one, it was the first man and the genius, but mine was the first man and the genie.
oh, okay.
Yes, a
But-
genius
but-
is a genie.
Yes, a genius is a genie. And, so this is, you might remember this from last year, Addison. So the Roman word genius, when we say genius, we mean you're brilliant, right? But it meant sort of like your tutelary spirit. I don't know, like you're a spirit that watches over you and informs you, or whatever. Or it can mean your psyche or your personality or your consciousness or whatever. So in the play Julius Caesar, do you remember? And Caesar's ghost appears to Brutus, and he says, "Who are you? I am your evil genius."
Yeah.
And so so I think that the word genie came from that word genius, this spirit. So we're all familiar with this idea of
I was-
genie in a bottle, and you rub the bottle.
I was reading a book. It says something. It calls them like djinn, like D-I.
Yes, a djinn
Oh,
is another name for a
yeah.
genie. Yes, a djinn. If you've ever read Just So Stories by Rudyard Kipling, like How the Camel Got His Hump, and which you should, if you haven't, talks about there's a djinn. A djinn comes and gives the camel his hump.
Well, the
But it's
genie
so
of the
weird. It's like-
fisherman's story
It's like
wasn't very smart.
D-I-J-I, and I'm not sure how to spell it, but
Oh.
it starts with D,
Yeah.
and it has so many silent letters. It's
Yes.
like you pronounce 2 of the letters, and it's like a 5-letter word. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, no, that genie. Oh, I can fit in the. No, don't go back in the. You're a
And
stupid
then
jerk.
let him out again.
Yeah, and then they let him out. It all turned out okay. But so yes, so keep reading, and so Sinbad will be first up, and I love the stories of Sinbad because it reminds me of going to the theater and seeing. Maybe you could probably find it on Netflix or something. The 7 Voyages of Sinbad. It's very cheesy. Like the special effects are not very good because it's an old movie, so it kind of makes you laugh. It's one of those. But it's a fun family movie. It's completely clean, Okay, and through Barbara 6. Oh, so here's, in my book, it's called The Little Hunchback.
Notre Dame.
I'm telling you nothing about The Little Hunchback, except I really want your feedback on what you think of The Little Hunchback story. Okay, and so you're going to read that, and you're also going to read chapter 4 of the Dorothy Mills book. And I hope yours comes rapidly, Natalie. I am so sorry. I always, it's always good to order early on, but sometimes you can't help it. If you just decide to take the class late, and then everybody's ordering their stuff because they're all starting school. It's just the way it is. So here is your reading questions. And on the back is the story. We're going to do the same thing we did last week. We're going to do it again.
Oh, this is the last.
It is. So it is about Saint Columba. Saint Columba, here, I'll just take one of these and pass it around too. I'll give you another outline. Saint Columba was another one of these guys that we read about in the reading for over the summer that we talked about last week. He was a saint that went off to north of Ireland, and he went to the island of Iona. And so Mariana, do you mind if I just borrow your story? I'm going to read it, and I don't actually have a copy. Okay, this is, as far as we know, a true story. This is not weird, like nobody's going to get turned to stone.
Okay.
This is a legit, okay. Columba was known for constant study and prayer, really, really constant. He is said to have written 300 books, by hand, of course, continuing to transcribe up to the night before he died. Finian and Columba got into a disagreement over a psalter. Okay, a psalter is a collection of the Psalms, a book with just Psalms in
It
it.
was like salts.
It does not have salt. According to one longer version of the story, it was the Vulgate, a Latin translation of the Bible, and the first copy of it to reach Ireland, which would make it a pretty appealing piece of literature. Columba borrowed the manuscript from Finian, possibly without permission, and secretly copied it with the intention of keeping it for his own use. But Finian said no. This was theft, illegal copying. He demanded that Columba hand over the copy he had made. So you get the idea? He borrowed in quotes, a manuscript, a book from his friend Finian, and copied it out. He did the copying, but it would be illegal copying because Finian didn't say it was okay.
Piracy.
Exactly. Finian took the matter to King, I don't know that I'm going to say this name right, Diarmait Mac Cerbhail, the High King of Ireland, for arbitration. All the people in
It's like
Ireland
a
have.
stage name.
You were talking about extra letters. Everybody in Ireland has extra letters. Okay. Believing he had done nothing wrong in his attempt to spread the word of the church, Columba agreed. It didn't hurt his expectations that Diarmait was a relative of him, Columba. Finian's argument was simple. My book. You can't copy it. He felt that if anyone was going to copy it, that it should be done through certain procedures and certainly not in secret under his own roof. Columba's response was not all that different from those in favor of less restriction in digital duplication, all right? That the book had not suffered by his copying. It is not right, he said, that the divine words in that book should perish, or that I or any other should be hindered from writing them, or reading them, or spreading them among the tribes. In his closing address, he told the court that those who owned the knowledge through books were obligated to spread the knowledge by copying and sharing them. He felt that to not share knowledge was a far greater offense than to copy a book that lost nothing by being copied. But the king ruled in Finian's favor, famously saying, "To every cow belongs its calf, to every book its copy." In other words, every copy of a book belonged to the owner of the original book.
Say that. Why do you have to bring them down?
It was a fun little metaphor. Of course, the story didn't end there. After more arguing and Columba's next offense, harboring a fugitive, the result was a battle, the death of 3,000 people, and Columba's exile. Yes.
What a depressing story.
Sorry. I am so sorry for the depressing story. So, but what Natalie said is very cool. Like, people call this the first copyright case. This is my book. You cannot make copies without my permission. You have to formally have my permission. And Columba's like, no, it's just words. I can copy it. Because remember, Columba did the actual writing. He did the work. But the content, it was ruled the content belongs to the guy who owns the book. It's just like today.
You should have made two copies and kept one secret.
I just kept thinking about, like, why don't they just use a long disregard? But then it's like, they don't have that in law yet.
Yes.
It doesn't, not in the beginning of everything.
Right.
They have to, like, piracy is not a victimless crime.
Exactly. That's what Finian said. Piracy is not, because that was Columba's argument. It is a victimless crime. The book does not suffer any harm. Of course, there was no money. Today, it involves money changing hands. You know, you pirate something, and if you don't buy a new copy, the people who produced it don't get paid. But so there was no money issue. But it was.
Owned the voting?
Well, we don't know what the book was. They said that one tradition says it was Vulgate. Now, he's not saying he owns the Bible. He's saying, I have this copy, and if you make a copy of my copy, I own this copy, and I have to give you permission. And really, that's the way it works. Like, this is my copy.
The copy of a copy, then doesn't the copy belong to the original person who wrote it? It's probably dead.
Yes, but here's the thing. I paid the person who is dead. Okay, this book is 100 years old, so I'm assuming Dorothy Mills is dead. I don't know this for a fact.
Do we know, like, that everything in the book is historically accurate? Like, have we learned stuff that might make a difference?
Yeah.
No, not probably not very much so. people, honestly, I mean, very, very little. I mean, especially in an elementary book like this. This is pretty much sure. If it was digging deep into the archaeology of this or that, it might have changed it. But so this is my copy. You all eventually will have a copy, and you paid for it. So I don't know if Dorothy Mills Estate gets it, Memorial Press gets it for this printing or whatever. But if I lent it to someone and they made a bunch of Xerox copies, that's illegal.
Like taking a picture of every page.
Yes, yeah, and then now I have a copy. So in the front it's probably all rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form by any means without written permission from the publisher.
What if I wrote down a sentence from that book?
Now, see, so this gets into when we write a paper and we quote a book. What do we normally do? We cite it. We have to say, this is where I got this quote from. And you can do that without writing to them. Often publishers say you can make copies for educational purposes. So this thing here, this outline, it's from the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and I'm actually a registered instructor for IEW, and with my registration, they give me the rights to make copies of all their sheets and give them to students. However, I'm not supposed to charge you money for each one. You know what I mean? Like it just comes with the class. But if I'm teaching a class, like I get free reign. They have given me permission. But if I didn't have the permission, I shouldn't be doing that. Now the map I gave you, it was public domain, so it was just free on the internet. There was just a website with these maps, and you didn't have to pay. It was just a free download. And so, but you can see how the internet, I mean, you guys have grown up with the internet being in existence, and I didn't. But it's a copyright nightmare, right? Because music, oh yes, so you can, we were just talking about this at the wedding. There was a song that the groom wanted for his dance with his mom, and it was one of my sons was putting together all the playlists. We didn't hire a DJ, we just had my son do it. And he just was doing a Spotify playlist, and we plugged it in. And he said, you cannot find the song, there's no MP3 available. And he said, I had to get it off YouTube, which you're not really supposed to do. Because we didn't charge money, we didn't play it for profit, and we played it once. I mean, technically it probably was not.
We could just look up the song on YouTube.
We could just play and just turn it and play it, yes. But it's just kind of opened up a real can of worms for all this stuff out there available, and it's hard on the people who make their living at that, because then they're not getting paid for it. When you just pirate music, or and movie piracy there were no VHS, there was no means of watching a movie in your own home when I was growing up. But when that started, people taping VHS movies and selling them on the street. Anyway, okay, that's enough about copyright infringement. Let's outline this story. So on our outline, I know it's not going to leave us. It's not going to. Okay, I'm peeking behind you, Marianne, just to see if the camera's still. So, Andrew, I'm going to say everything I'm writing on the board, but I hope you can see it, or maybe you can zoom in on the video. Oh, crud. I just remembered something I was supposed to do before I started the video. It's okay.
It's on YouTube, we can't.
Well, okay. So our first paragraph, we're going to make 3 paragraphs. Our first paragraph, we're going to say who's in the story, where are they, when is it happening, the characters in the setting. Tell me someone who's in this story. Columba. Columba, you can put just Columba, or you can put St. Columba. Okay. Who is St. Columba? Does it tell? I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to do something. Does it tell you in the story who he is?
Constance. Well, he is a saint. That's what it says in the title.
Okay. It doesn't tell you he's a monk.
He was known for constant study and prayer.
Okay.
Really, really constant.
Okay. So how about we just say he's St. Columba and he loves to read.
And he wrote 300 books.
Okay. We could put that in if we want. Do you like that? He wrote 300 books? Ah! It's in my face!
It went in my eye.
Once I was mine, I got like 3 bucks on it.
Would you guys think you will remember that the heart, I mean, we use that all the time, right? Love, the heart means love. You heart something, online. So we have St. Columba, who loves to read and wrote 300 books.
Say we love to read, but I guess kind of.
No,
Obvious.
for constant study and prayer.
Well,
That wouldn't mean
we're
loves
gonna
it.
okay. Well, we're gonna assume that he did it because he loved it, and not because somebody was forcing him. Somebody wasn't standing over him saying, "Read another book, Columba." We're gonna assume. And you said we have another person, Finian. Does it tell us who Finian is, or just a friend?
Just that Phineas and Columba got into a disagreement.
Okay.
over the salt.
It didn't say they're friends.
It
Well,
just said
it-
Finian. It just started.
Phineas
Here.
and Columba got into a disagreement
even
over
Okay,
the
so we don't really know anything about Finian except he owns books.
Yeah.
Finian, who, well, he owns at least one book, because it's the one that Columba snatched and copied. So we're going to say Finian, who owned books. All right, we can make that sound better when we write it. That sounds kind of stilted. Where do these people live?
Ireland.
They live in Ireland. Do we know anything else about where, when? Does it tell us anything about the when? Now I am going to peek over your shoulder. Doesn't really say, does it?
It doesn't even say they live in Ireland. It just
Well,
says
it does.
they
It does. They went to the High King of Ireland. They are. I will tell you for a fact that they are in Ireland. Let's see if we can add something in just to round this out. What else did it say about St. Columba? He wrote 300 books. He loved. He studied in.
known for constant study and prayer. So literally constant.
Okay. Here, can I see your story again? I'm sorry. Oh, here, I'm gonna stick another comment in. Just, here's what I'm doing. I would like to fill this paragraph out a little bit, and I really don't, this is actually a historical story, and I don't know what year this is happening, and I don't wanna just make something up. Last week, we just kinda made some stuff up, because we didn't really know if it was. This actually happened as far as we know, yes. And so I would like to add in that comment that he copied, he continued to transcribe up to the night he died. But it kind of would go up here. Did you get it?
No, missed it.
Good try. I'm going to write, can you guys see what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a little arrow and I'm going to stick it in here because this comment kind of belongs in there. Copied books till death. That makes it sound like copying books killed him a little bit. But he copied books to death. No, I don't really mean it that way at all.
Like he copied the books till they died.
Yeah. Yes, it does. So we have St. Columba. He loved to read. He wrote 300 books. In fact, he's continued copying books right up until he died. And we also have Finian, who owns a lot of books. And these men,
300 books as in his own.
I-
Or he copied.
I don't know. We have books. We have a book about
Okay,
St.
he is
Columba.
said to have written 300 books by hand.
We don't know. We're just going to leave it at that because that's what we know.
Should we say copy or
Transcribe.
You know what? I'm gonna leave it the way we've got it close enough. Okay. We're not gonna publish our papers in a history book. I'm sorry. If you thought we were gonna do that, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. I'm not submitting any of these for publication. You be my guest if you want to. Okay, so in the first paragraph we have who are they, where are they? Okay, we have the setting and the characters. Now we need the problem. What is the main problem? I know, 8 loves you now. It has loved all of us in turn, and now you are the favored one. Okay, so what led to the copying of the book? What? Here, let's try to just, I know, it's very distracting. When it about went up my nose, I was quite distracted. What does Finian have that Columba wants?
Salter.
Okay, so Finian, let's just say it's a Psalter, okay, instead of the Vulgate. That's the way I usually hear it told. Finian owned Psalter. And how does Columba feel about it?
Jealous.
Okay, what's he want? What is
He
it?
wants to share like the salsa with the world.
Okay, so because we were asking our questions, what do they want? What do they need? What do they do? Columba, how about we just say Columba wants a copy? It does say in our story that he wants to share it with the world, but let's just, his motives in wanting the copy, we'll just let that go, because this is just 3 paragraphs. So what does he do about it?
He steals it.
Steals it. Steals,
Wait, this guy's the same?
well, he borrowed it. He wasn't ever going to keep it. Do you know what I mean? He borrowed it
with
to
the
make,
intention of keeping it for his own use.
no, he made a copy for the intention of keeping it for his own use.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he steals and copies the book. How's Finian feel about this when he finds out?
Angry.
Finian,
How did he not notice it was gone?
I don't
How
know,
long did
because
it
you would think it would take a while. But maybe Finian, I'm gonna use my imagination now. Maybe Finian owns so many books he didn't notice, or B, maybe Finian is so busy he wasn't doing a lot of reading at that point. I don't know. You guys are just full of good questions, and I have no answers.
He went to go see some sick person, or went off to a wedding or something, and then when he came back, the book was gone.
The book was
Or
gone.
it's like when this little kid thinks we're playing with a toy and they don't care about it until somebody else takes it.
Yes. Where's my whatever that I haven't played with in 6 months? Okay. So Finian is angry, and he says, your copy is mine. Bailey is having such a nice, peaceful nap. All over the floor. Okay, so our final paragraph, we have to know how it gets resolved, right? Because it would be a bummer if you're reading a story and it just leaves with the terrible problem and then we don't have any solution, right?
Murder.
That would be a solution, but that is not the solution that happens in our story. That would be a resolution. Columba kills. Yeah.
exile.
Well, let's do the events leading up to it. What does Finian do? How is he going to resolve the dispute?
They go to the high court.
Okay, they go to High King. And what does each of them do when they get in front of the High King?
They explain how they think what they're doing is right.
Okay, so do you know what we say when people go to court nowadays and they go in?
Give their case.
They give their case. They plead. We often say they plead their case. So they plead their cases. Should we include the comment about the cow, Natalie?
Yes.
Natalie does not think the cow is necessary. And the High King rules what? The king says, book is Finian's. Well, he is the High King. It doesn't do you much good to be king if you don't get to decide, like, court cases.
Go to, the judge instead of
maybe there was no judge. Ireland had kind of a loose organization at this time, and for a long time after. So what happens after? Could we just? Hey Neil, be with you in a minute. What happens to Columba later?
Exiled.
Okay. Well, because of that big battle.
Wait,
Okay.
More arguing and Columba's next defense, harboring a fugitive from the king.
Yes.
The result was the Battle of
Of a thing with too many letters.
Jimmy.
And it's never, you never pronounce
Death
these
of
words like you
3,000
think.
people.
Okay.
And Columba's exile.
Okay. So, well,
Well, it's a according
because
to
they
ordinary
want to
man.
know. Okay. So,
Columba's next defense.
how about we say more battles follow and Columba is exiled. The story of his exile is really sad. He wanted to sail just far enough over the horizon away from Ireland that he could not physically see Ireland anymore from where he was because it broke his heart that he couldn't be there. But he wanted to know it was not too far away. And actually there is a story that he came back. He heard a friend was in trouble and he came back and he risked penalty of death or whatever it was if you return to go and defend his friend in court. No, they let him go back. He went back into exile though. And there is a book, well, obviously we're done and we don't have time, but there's a book that tells stories about St. Columba that a friend wrote down. Okay, so remember what we're gonna do. We are gonna just use our notes to rewrite 3 paragraphs. Do you have to tell the information in the order we wrote it down? No, you can mix things up, you can arrange things however you want. Also, I can say this here, it doesn't apply to anyone in this class because it was a student from another class. But I got an email last night from a mom who said, oh, my student has lost the story and doesn't have the reading questions. And we meet on Wednesday. So this told me something. This told me that student didn't do any work and they were going to do it all the day before class. Wrong answer, okay? So, if you may be a really good writer, but don't just do this next Monday, okay? Neil, can you open the door? It's okay. No, it's okay. It's hot. We'll be right there.
I know you're there. I'll come when you're done. Just go.
Okay. It is a long walk. It's hot outside. Be merciful. You know what I would do is I would tomorrow get my outline out, and you don't even have to write the whole thing at once. Just write one paragraph if you want to, and just think about it. Like, don't just write it as fast as you can. Think about it.
What I learned too, I would always have my outline, then I'd write a rough draft, then I'd type it on the computer.
Okay,
Then
watch
my
out.
mom would look over it and I'd add all punctuation and fix my spelling and all that.
Yes. So that I like Natalie's. So rough draft, and then sometimes it's a very good idea to set the rough draft aside. Don't proofread it right after you write it, because you know what you meant, you know what you said. So your eyes will just fill in what you think you said, and you might leave words out or whatever, and you don't. Also, my advice to you is, so I've written my rough draft. I've written it out. Whatever, I've got it. Read it out loud. Because when I just read over something, I do this all the time. I mean, with things I write. I read it and I read in what I wanted to say. But if I read it out loud, I find typos, I find mistakes. You don't have to read it to someone. You can read it to your pet. You can read it to the clouds, whatever. But if you read it out loud, you will find mistakes. And then do a nice, neat copy, a final draft, all right? So that should take you, that's at least 3, days right there. So don't wait till Monday, okay? So rewrite that, read chapter 4, read the next section of Arabian Nights, and I will see you next week. And stay cool this week, because it's going to be a scorcher. Yes, Addison.
So I read, I did all of my homework yesterday because we got back from
Yes.
vacation on Sunday. Is that alright?
Yeah, no,
like, for the
you
future,
can't help
what
it.
should I do?
No, you can't help it if you were gone.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it's best, when we write, it's best not to just do all those steps in one day. Because if you write it, and then you read it, and then you rewrite it, you're not giving yourself time to come back to it and say, that sounds kind of funny, or I don't think the grammar's right there. That word just doesn't seem to express what I wanted to say. I'm looking at thesaurus. There's got to be a better word for that. You know, that process, often when you write something and then you put it aside and come back in a day or 2 days later, you aren't as satisfied with what you wrote as you thought you were when you first wrote it. Does that make sense? Okay. So I just encourage
Like
last
drawing
minute.
something and then just staring at it forever and then hate it. 'Cause that
Yes.
happens a lot.
I can tell when I get papers, generally, unless people are really, really good writers, I can tell, yeah, you just dashed that off the day before, didn't you? Versus, yeah, you took a little time. Okay. Now I'm not like outing you if some of you did it just yesterday. I'm not, but I'm just saying our goal is not just to please me and hand in what I asked you to hand in. Our goal is just to get better. Right? Our goal is to be better readers and writers. And I think it helps when you don't rush yourself. Okay, that's enough preaching. I've mommed you all. And I'm going to, excuse me, Mariana, I'm going to